Fade in on a close-up of hands pushing open a heavy steel door. For a moment, the frame is nothing but gray concrete and bars. Then sunlight spills in, blinding, almost unreal. And a man steps across the threshold for the first time in decades. For years, his world was 8 by 10 feet of concrete, 23 hours a day in a cell designed for silence. Now, after serving his time in a Supermax prison, he's free. But what does freedom mean after a life in lockdown? This documentary takes you inside the rarely told story of life after Supermax. The men and women who walk out of solitary confinement into a society they barely recognize. We'll follow their first days on the outside, their struggles with mental health, housing and employment, and the families waiting to welcome or reject them. Stay until the end for the story of one former prisoner whose fight to rebuild his life helped change re-entry programs nationwide. This is From America's Cell to Society, Life After Supermax. Crossing the threshold. Every year, thousands of inmates complete their sentences in America's highest security facilities. Some come out of general population. Others come directly from years, even decades, in solitary confinement. For them, release day is not just liberation, it's sensory overload. We meet David, a composite of real cases. After 17 years in a Supermax unit, he's being processed for release. He turns in his prison ID, receives a small bag of clothes, and is escorted through multiple gates to the outer door. Each clank of metal echoes like a memory. Beyond the last fence, his sister waits with a car. He blinks at the sky. The noise of traffic feels deafening. The smell of grass seems unreal. It's like landing on another planet, he says. This opening chapter grounds viewers in a vivid moment. The first breath of free air after years of isolation. It's triumphant and terrifying. Studies show that long-term solitary confinement can impair memory, decision-making, and social skills, all essential for re-entry. Freedom's shock. Within hours of release, former Supermax prisoners confront a world transformed by technology and pace. Smartphones, contactless payments, social media, even the slang has changed. A man who left in 2005 may not know what an app is. A woman who spent a decade in solitary may panic in a supermarket aisle. Psychologists call it post-institutional syndrome, a cluster of anxiety, hypervigilance, and sensory overload common after long confinement. Some describe ducking when doors slam, flinching at crowds, needing to sleep on the floor rather than a bed. We cut to footage of David sitting in a diner. He holds a menu but can't focus. The noise of clinking silverware makes his heart race. His sister gently explains the choices, like a translator in a foreign country. The hunt for housing. Freedom begins with an address. But for someone leaving a Supermax, a stable home is often the hardest thing to secure. Parole conditions may forbid living near schools or with people who have criminal records. Many landlords flatly reject applicants with felony histories. Public housing lists stretch for years. David and his sister drive to a low-cost motel. It's all she can afford for a week. He sits on the bed, staring at a television remote, the first he's held in almost 2 decades. The news scrolls by too fast to read. Outside, neon glows. Inside, the air smells like disinfectant. Without housing, everything else, jobs, treatment, even basic stability, becomes harder. A 2018 study by the Prison Policy Initiative found that people released from prison are nearly 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general population. Those coming from solitary confinement have the toughest time of all. Fit in lacking family ties or money for deposits. Without housing, everything else, jobs, treatment, even basic stability, becomes harder. A 2018 study by the Prison Policy Initiative found that people released from prison are nearly 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general population. Those coming from solitary confinement have the toughest time of all, often lacking family ties or money for deposits. We see footage of a re-entry nonprofit worker explaining paperwork, guiding a newly released man to a halfway house. "It's like teaching someone to walk again," she says. Only they're walking into a minefield of rejection, work, and the stigma of Supermax. Employment is the second pillar of re-entry, and just as fraught. For years, the inmate's job was cleaning a cell or pushing a food cart under guard. Now, employers ask for resumes, references, digital skills. The Ban the Box movement has removed felony questions from some applications, but background checks still flag convictions. David applies at a warehouse. The manager nods politely, then hesitates. "Supermax," he repeats, eyes flicking to the security guard at the door. Later, David receives an email. "We have decided to pursue other candidates." Former inmates describe this as a second sentence, punished not by a judge, but by stigma. Even when they find work, it's often low wage and unstable. Some states fund special re-entry programs that partner with employers, offering tax credits or training grants. Others leave individuals to navigate the labor market alone. This chapter lets viewers feel the grinding daily reality of trying to rebuild a life under the shadow of a Supermax past. Reconnecting with family. For many people leaving a Supermax, the most emotionally charged moment isn't walking out the gate. It's walking into a living room full of family. Years of separation, limited visits, and censored letters create a kind of emotional time warp. Parents age, children become strangers, spouses move on. We follow David to his sister's house. She has set a place for him at the table. Her children whisper from the hallway, unsure whether to approach. When he hugs them, his hands tremble. The smell of home-cooked food triggers memories of meals long gone. He eats slowly, eyes darting to the door every time it opens. Family reunification can be a lifeline, but also a minefield. Some relationships don't survive incarceration. Others are strained by parole conditions, poverty, or unresolved trauma. A 2019 Urban Institute study found that structured family support reduces recidivism, but it requires counseling, patience, and time. As the camera lingers on David's face, viewers sense the mixed emotions: joy, shame, gratitude, and fear. It's not a Hollywood reunion. It's the first step in a fragile process of rebuilding trust. The mental health battle. Years in solitary confinement alter the brain. Hypervigilance, depression, paranoia, and insomnia are common. Yet many re-entering citizens lack insurance or access to mental health care. Without treatment, the stress of freedom can lead to relapse, self-harm, or re-offending. David begins seeing a counselor through a nonprofit re-entry program. He struggles to articulate feelings. "It's like my head's still in the cell," he says. He wakes at 3 a.m., pacing the motel room, unable to sleep in a bed. Loud noises trigger panic attacks. Crowds feel threatening. Experts call this post-incarceration syndrome. It's not formally recognized in diagnostic manuals, but is well documented in research. Therapy, medication, and peer support groups can help, but only if they're available. Funding for such programs varies wildly by state. This chapter invites viewers to empathize with the invisible scars of incarceration, shifting the focus from punishment, not to healing, the former inmate who helped change re-entry programs. Not every story ends in tragedy. Some end in transformation. Meet Marcus Fields, a composite character based on several real-life men who spent decades in Supermax units and later became advocates for re-entry reform. Marcus entered a state Supermax at 19 after a violent robbery. He spent 14 years in a cell the size of a parking space. In solitary, he began reading law books and writing to nonprofits. One letter connected him with a volunteer attorney who encouraged him to earn a paralegal certificate by correspondence. Released at 34, Marcus faced all the same obstacles we've seen: homelessness, unemployment, panic attacks. But instead of retreating, he volunteered at a local re-entry nonprofit. Within a year, he was helping design workshops for other returning citizens: how to build resumes, explain convictions to employers, apply for housing, manage stress. Marcus became a bridge between two worlds. He testified before a state legislature about the cost savings of re-entry support versus reincarceration. His proposals, job training credits, mental health vouchers, and peer mentorship, were written into law as a pilot program. 3 years later, recidivism among participants dropped by nearly 30%. In interviews, Marcus says, "I was locked in a box for years. Now I'm unlocking boxes for others." For viewers, his story is a moment of hope and proof of possibility. What Life After Supermax tells us about justice. Supermax prisons were built to contain society's most dangerous individuals. They succeeded at confinement. But what happens when the door opens? This documentary has shown the sensory shock, the struggle for housing and work, the fragile reconnection with family, and the mental health battles that follow. We end not with an answer, but with a question. If we expect people to return to society, what do we owe them to make that return safe for everyone? Letters from lockdown and lives after Supermax remind us that punishment doesn't end at the gate. The choices we make about re-entry ripple outward, affecting families, communities, and public safety. And sometimes, as with Marcus, one person's second chance can transform a system. Thanks for watching Behind Bars TV. If this documentary opened your eyes, hit the like button and subscribe for more real stories from inside the world's toughest prisons. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next episode.